Join our knowledgeable hosts as they dive into the captivating universe of comic books, movies, TV shows, and pop culture. Get ready for vibrant discussions and a shared enthusiasm for all things superhero and beyond. A comic podcast straight from the panels. This is Beyond the Capes.
All right. So, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Cape podcast. With us today, we have special guest Ming Chen. I know you've probably seen his show on AMC, Comic Book Men. You might have even seen him in a Kevin Smith film. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. It's an honor being here. We're going beyond the Cape. We are, there's the Cape. We're going beyond it. So, it's truly an honor to be here, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's always good to see you. I know we've seen you at C2E2 for quite a few times. I don't know if you're coming back this year in April.
I would, and C2E2, let me tell you, is one of the best cons out there. A little underrated in my opinion, actually. You got Chicago, it's such a great town, multiple comic book stores, and then C2E2 just, in my opinion, it's a less chaotic New York Comic Con. If anyone's ever been to New York, and everyone's like, oh, New York, San Diego. I'm like, no, man, C2E2, man. That's where it's at. Won't be there this year, though, only because I have to go to a con in Anchorage, Alaska.
Oh, man, yeah, you're going on the completely opposite side, which is a shame because, like I said, it's crazy to think that this will be the 15th year of C2E2.
Wow, I didn't realize it'd been that long. That's amazing.
Yeah. Now, the crazy thing is, everyone knows... you came here, you're born in Ohio. You spent a lot of time in Michigan. Obviously, we're just coming off of that great football win. That was exciting.
Yeah, go Blue. Good for the Midwest. And then, anything not Ohio State is a good thing. So, but yeah. I'm a Midwest kid like you guys are. I moved around a lot, but I spent most of my time actually in South Bend, Indiana. I spent about 7 years there. Or, as sometimes we like to call it, it's Chicago East, right? South Bend. But Chicago, very formative where being in South Bend, it's only about 80 minutes away. And my parents would always drag us there because there was really good Chinatown over there in Chicago.
Yeah.
So, that's, to me, that was like my New York. That was like my Hell's Kitchen or my Gotham that was my taste of the big city was Chicago. So I think, a lot of formative years there, and then spent the rest of it in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So, this is why we're friends, man. We're from the Midwest. There's something to be said about, the 80-90 toll road, that it changes you, man. That, drinking Faygo, things like that. These are things we experience that a lot of people outside of that don't know about. I think it makes it cooler and stronger for sure.
Oh, yeah. If you've never been to Chicago and you've never driven down Lower East Wacker and lost your GPS and had no idea where you were going until the sunlight hit, it's a different experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, you got your degree in communications in Michigan, and obviously we know how that career took off for you. Did you ever see yourself when you were doing that program, like where you're at now, or was there two vastly different plans for you?
Oh, no, there were vastly different plans. So... to start, I got a degree in communications at University of Michigan. Everyone was like, wow, did you set out to be a communicator? I'm like, no. I went to the guidance counselor. I was like, what's the quickest way out of here? I have to graduate. At the time, I was learning how to build websites, and that was starting to take off. I started doing it for fun, and then that's how I got connected with Kevin Smith. I made a Clerks fan website, and he saw it. He loved it, and he ended up hiring me. So with that in mind, doing websites was kind of like one of those things. It was early on. It was the mid-'90s, 1995, learning how to build websites. And I was just making little fan sites. I made a personal page. I was like, wow, this is fun, man. Putting my own content on the internet. This is really fun. But then came one day, I was like, hey, well, I'll pay you to do this. Can you make a website for me? I'll give you money for this. I was like, holy crap, really? Like, you'll give me $100 to make a website? Yeah, okay. And then, I found Kevin, and then I was like, whoa, there are businesses that need these. So, I need to get out of college as quick as I could. There wasn't time to screw around anymore. And I remember I went to the guidance counselor. I was like, hey, what's the quickest way out of here? Here's my transcript. Here's all the things I've done already. What's the quickest way out? And he's like, well, if you do this, this, and this, you can get a degree in communications. They'll get you out of here in, like 7 months or whatever. And I was like, all right. And yeah, that's what I did. So, and based on my background of building websites, and since I kind of became good at it early on, yeah, I got hired, I think 2 weeks after I graduated. So that worked out. So the funny part is I was still doing stuff for Kevin. That was more, it was on the side, but I said, I need to go get a real job first. And, I got a job doing websites, moved down to the Maryland area, and it was cool, but I was working, the company that hired me was a nonprofit. The stuff I worked on wasn't really that interesting. It wasn't something that I was into. But when I got home at night, though, that's when I would do the stuff I really wanted to do. I would help out. I would do Kevin stuff. I do stuff for View Askew Productions and Kevin Smith. So, I was kind of leading this dual life where by day, go work out for this kind of vanilla nonprofit. And then at night, I would do stuff for Kevin, which was, way more fun because I was into it. So, yeah, I was telling people, I was like, I'm like Batman, man. I'm like, by day I do something, and by night I do something else. Wasn't fighting crime or anything, but I was helping out Kevin Smith. It's kind of like the same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly like the same thing. And it's got to be crazy. I mean, you started off, you built this website, and did Kevin just come up to you and he's just like, hey, you want to now be in an uncredited role in Dogma and you're going to watch Salma Hayek strip?
Yeah. So, it was funny. He said he was at an internet cafe one day in 1995 when those existed. And so he was like, hey, how do I search for stuff that did anyone make anything based on what my movies? And they're like, yeah, there are probably a couple fan pages out there. And that's how he found mine. And I remember he actually he just asked me to call him out of the blue. And I did. And we had a pretty good conversation about the future of the internet. And he was really not just fascinated by it, but he was like, hey, this is going to take off. This internet thing's going to be really good. And I want to be at the forefront of it. He wanted to release behind the scenes photos and information based on his movies. But what he really wanted to do was he wanted to communicate with fans. He wanted an easy way to communicate with fans. So we ended up coming up with this kind of rudimentary message board system where people would post questions, and then when he had time, he could go and answer them. And even though it looked kind of cheap, it was all text based, and it wasn't very complicated. It looks exactly like Reddit does now. So we're both waiting for our Reddit checks, man, because it was almost like we invented it.
Yeah.
After that, started doing a lot of stuff for him. And then, in 1998, he was like, hey, finally shooting that movie Dogma that I've always wanted to do. I would love to put you in it. Can you show up in Pittsburgh in 3 days? That's where we're filming. And I mapped it out. I was like, hey, I can drive there in 7 hours. I would love to come up. I would love to have a chance to be in a Kevin Smith movie. And I remember I pulled up at the location. It was this rundown strip club in a bad neighborhood in Pittsburgh. And I walk in, and the crew's there, and Kevin's there. I was like, hey, man, this is cool. Is this part of the movie? He's like, yeah. Where this scene takes place in a strip club. I'm like, cool. Where am I going to be? Am I going to be in the background? You're going to just throw me in the background? Cool. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be in a Kevin Smith movie. That's awesome. He's like, oh, no. I got something planned for you. I got something cool planned for you. I'm going to have you up front next to me and Jay as Jay and Silent Bob. And Salma Hayek's going to come out, and she's going to take her clothes off. I need you to act like you're enjoying this. Can you do it? I'm like, yeah, I think I can pull that off, Kevin. I think I can pull that off. So if you watch Dogma and you see me there with a big grin on my face, not really acting. That's a real reaction there, my friends. So yeah, pretty cool day. I got to meet Chris Rock. I got to meet Linda Fiorentino. It was a really, they shot it. It took 2 days to shoot. It was really cool. And the kicker was when I got home, I had a check in the mail. They paid me. I got paid. Got paid to watch Salma Hayek take her clothes off. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, not many people can say that. Now, obviously, you've known Kevin Smith then for a while. Did you guys connect just on his movies or obviously comic books? I mean, we all know you from the AMC show itself. So I got to imagine you guys kind of share a kind of passion for that.
Yeah, I mean, with a guy like Kevin, like he's such a cool dude that it was a lot of everything. So I loved his movies for sure. But watching his movies, I was like, okay, I think we like the same kind of movies based on his humor, the references. I remember even watching Clerks. I was like, holy crap, does this guy just make a Star Wars reference about stormtroopers changing toilets on the Death Star? That's awesome. That's a conversation that me and my friends back home would have. Now, this guy put it into a movie. This guy's awesome. You know, I think everybody kind of sees Kevin and the movies he makes, and everyone's like, hey, I want him as a friend. I think that's why a lot of people love and connect with Kevin, because he's just a guy that, you know, if he lived in your neighborhood or went to college with you or worked with you, you guys would be friends immediately. And I think that's why people love that. But yeah, then he liked the same comics that I did, that I do. I remember I started reading Preacher and Spawn and you know, those late '90s Vertigo titles and Image because of Kevin. I remember a big thing. I picked up the Preacher trade paperback, and if you look at the top, there's a quote, and it says, "Reading Preacher is more fun than going to the movies." Kevin Smith, and so that he read cooler comics than I did, so he got me in even more cool stuff back in the '90s. Because I like in the night, like I was reading like Gen 13 and DV8, like those aren't real comics. Like, I mean, no offense, but they're better. They're more comics with better content than them. Yeah. So he got me into stuff that was way cooler. But even his taste in movies, his taste in pop culture, the conversations that he had, we connected on many levels for sure.
Now, what was it like being on Comic Book Men and kind of being involved with that day-to-day filming, considering you kind of had kind of a dual life? Did that kind of stop and you just put everything kind of full send into that?
I did. It wasn't really a dual life. Like, me and my friends sitting around a comic book shop counter, BSing about Death Stars and flux capacitors and, Jesse Custer and, Hawkeye. That's stuff we would do anyways. So it would usually be me, Mike, and Walt BSing about pop culture or whatever movie came out, and then Brian coming in and crapping all over it. That we were doing that anyways. The only difference is they brought in TV cameras now. They filmed it, did some editing, and put it out as Comic Book Men. So yeah, it wasn't really different from our normal lives. It's pretty cool how we just kind of went in and flowed right into it. I think maybe that was why it worked. Maybe that was the beauty of it, is it wasn't scripted, it wasn't forced. We weren't talking about stuff that we weren't into. It was another day at the store, really. So, where we thought it was weird was I remember when Kevin was like, "Hey, they're going to shoot a show here. You guys are going to be on it," and I was like, "Well, what's the show going to be about?" And I was like, "Well, it's going to be mainly about you guys buying and selling stuff, but between all that, you're going to be BSing about what you usually BS about." And I'm like, who's going to watch that? That sounds so stupid. Like, we're going to get canceled after 2 episodes. That's asinine. Who would even watch or listen to that? And, what I didn't realize is that in every other comic shop, in every car wash, office building, dead-end job, there were other guys just like us having those same conversations. So I think that's why people related to us so well. But I had no idea. I thought it was I really thought it was. I was like, this is a dumb idea. This isn't going to work. But maybe, even if we do get canceled after 2 episodes, we'll have 2 episodes of me, Mike, Walt, and Brian somewhere out there on record. And I could tell people that, there was a time when I was on a TV show and, it came out for 2 episodes and it got canceled. Now I can go out there and was like, well, there once used to be a TV show, but we got 96 episodes. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And it was nice to see you guys because, I mean, Kevin had always talked about in interviews, like, I got this friend, Walt. Trust me, he knows everything about New Jersey history, hockey, comics. And we always heard about it. And then that show kind of put you guys forefront and kind of really let us see, like, okay, this is exactly what Kevin's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and for me in particular, Walt and Brian, he grew up with. So we always heard those stories. I met them later on, and then I saw how wacky they were. And for me, I think my favorite part of the show is that the world gets to see Brian Johnson and Walt Flanagan. my two friends, who one's a grumpy old man, but he's really funny. He makes fun of everybody. He's really good at it. My other weird friend who loves comics and hockey, and he's just kind of he's cynical about everything, hates everything, but has these real flashes of brilliance. And he's really funny. Those are the two guys I really wanted the world to see. Yeah, I always kind of felt like me and Mike were there too, but I always thought these guys should be at the forefront, man, because they're just so weird. They're weird guys, but it's so weird that they're interesting. They're at the same time like a train wreck, and like a really good movie, and a really weird movie, like all mashed up into one thing. I thought that was really cool.
For sure. And I think you and Mike definitely got your own fan base. I know one of our other co-hosts, he actually got to be on the show for winning a contest to sell I think it was the Spider-Woman corkboard. So he was
I remember that. That was a cool piece.
Yeah, he was happy to see you guys. But when he went there, his wife, and I've known her for a long time, she's like, whatever you do, don't yell at Ming, because she's like, Walt and Brian, they're just too mean to him. Someone needs to be nice to him.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Pretty much the whole world had my back. So, I go to cons. They're like, hey man, we had your back. Screw Brian Johnson. He's too mean to you. We were rooting for you all the way. So that part I appreciated. I also did meet a lot of people going, hey man, Brian was funny. I really liked it when he was making fun of you. So it goes both ways. You have different types of people. But I love that for the most part, the world had my back. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so the biggest question I get though is, those guys making fun of you, it's just for the show, right? That's not real. I was like, oh no, in real life, it's even worse, man. It's even worse because there's no editing in real life. Yeah, those guys, we've known each other for 20, 28, 29 years now. They've been making fun of me since day one. It won't stop. And from pretty much minute one, they were making fun of me. I don't know what it is. I guess I'm just a punching bag sometimes, right? It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, is it? No. In every group of friends, there's always that one guy you make fun of,
Yeah, I mean, that was the nice thing about all four of you guys is you guys are like the trope group. Like you could look at every story and like there's a Walt Flanagan at every comic book shop,
right?
Almost everywhere. And that was always nice to see.
Yeah, for sure. But I guess there's always a Ming Chen. There's always a Ming Chen. Yeah. There's always a Butters somewhere. There's always a Linus or a Pigpen or a Snoopy. Yeah, in every group there's that one person.
Now the crazy thing with Comic Book Men that really took off is you guys were kind of on the ground floor for like Smodco and podcasts, because after that, I mean, Smodco just blew up.
Yeah, that was really cool. But I give all credit to Kevin for that. Kevin's kind of a genius, even though Kevin's so self-deprecating, and I think he uses it to deflect his true genius. Now with the website and the message board we had, way ahead of its time. When we had that set up, there were no famous people interacting with fans. He was pretty much the only one online. Years later, we got Instagram, we got Twitch, Twitter, we got, Facebook, multiple ways for famous people to interact with their fans, but that didn't exist back then. Podcasting, Kevin did it way back in 2007. So that was easily 5 to 8 years before anybody else did it on a larger scale. And so he's always been at the forefront. He's kind of a genius, that guy. And he's continued, indie film. He was at the forefront of that too. So I say whatever he's doing, keep an eye on it, because that's probably going to be the future.
For sure. And he knows how to get the right people. I mean, he snatched you up. I mean, you're building websites early on. You enjoy it. And it just so happens you have a communications degree. And I'm assuming you learned a lot of the engineering part of it, because for podcasts, it's a give and take with both.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I'm a behind the scenes guy. I'll sit in the dark room behind a computer. I think my best analogy for what I truly love to do, like I'm Ned from Spider-Man. I'm Ned. I tell Peter Parker where to go, left to right. I'm the guy in the chair. That's me. That's what I prefer to do. I'll sit in the dark room and edit video and audio. I press buttons, make sure, that So for what I do now, that turned out really well. So I started because Kevin started podcasting. He's like, hey, I need an East Coast podcast setup. Can you go to Guitar Center? Here's a list of things that was recommended that I get. Can you go buy all that, learn how to use it, and set it up in the back of the comic book shop on that poker table we have back there? So that's how I started. If you watch Comic Book Ben, that's our setup. We're podcasting around a poker table. So all that is based on real life. But yeah, for years I was just making sure you got recorded, doing some light editing, made sure it was up on iTunes when he wanted to release it. It wasn't until maybe about 3 years later in 2010, he's like, hey, I want to start a podcast network. I want a whole bunch of other shows. I want to start my own network. I want to start the Smodcast podcast network. I need you to start a podcast. I need another show. I need shows that aren't just me. Can't just be me and other people. Need other voices, other opinions. Like, I want you to start a podcast about comic books and pop culture. I'm like, well, why would I do it? Why don't you do it? He's like, I have one where I talk about Batman. That's all I want to talk about. You know, you're in the store here with Mike, you know, grab Mike, start your own podcast about pop culture and comic books. I'm like, who's going to listen to this? Like, hey, I'll help you promote it, but you guys will find an audience. But not only that, beyond that, you're guys are going to have fun. You guys are going to love this. He's like, there's nothing like getting behind the microphone. And I'm like, all right, reluctantly, I gave it a shot though. And I remember that we were recording that first episode of Mike Zapsik, recorded in the back of the comic book shop. And I remember it was like magic, man. We had a great conversation. We had fun. I remember I asked, like, how long does this have to be, man? Because I just wanted to get it over with. He's like, can you do 45 minutes? It's like, all right, I can do 45. Sounded like an eternity. But so what happened, we didn't really have a clock in there or anything. We just went. And by the time we were done, I looked over pulled out my phone, looked at the time, 2 hours had gone by. It flew. As you know, when you're on a roll with podcasting, especially, like, you can, time doesn't mean anything.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And, by the time, some days 2 hours ago, I was like, wow, we had a really good conversation. That was cool. Most importantly, though, I think I went back and I listened to that first episode we recorded. Like, how did it turn out? I remember being there. I remember having the conversation, but I needed to listen to it from an outside perspective. And I listened to it and I was like, wow, this is pretty good. Like, if this is a real radio show, it would have counted. We talked very passionately. We talked very knowledgeably. We had a really good flow between each other because we were friends already. But I was like, well, this is really good. I was shocked. And, I think Mike kind of put it best. He's like, you know what? We were talking about stuff that we love. When you talk about things that you love, you're pretty much an expert on it. I was like, yeah, that's a good point. Us guys who talk about Star Wars, we've probably seen A New Hope more times than George Lucas has by far. He doesn't have to watch it 100 times a year. No. He lived it. He was there. But as such, since since guys like me and you watch it 100 times a year, we know every factoid about that. Some stuff that he probably even forgot. So, that pretty much makes us experts. So, but we got hooked from episode 1, and from there we just kept going, man. So for years and years and years. So that was 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And that podcast is called I Sell Comics. It's online, people seem to enjoy it. So that's cool.
Yeah. Now I know the secret stash has moved. Do you guys still have access to the poker table?
We do. We kept all the poker tables. I think we had 2 of them total. We ended up getting a third one. And we still have the poker tables. Content still recorded in the back of the shop. And I don't think that'll ever change. So, now obviously Kevin has gone beyond that. He bought a whole movie theater now called the Smodcast Cinemas. But they have means to record stuff over there as well. So he does it over there. On occasion, he'll come into the studio I built called the Shared Universe, and he'll record stuff here as well.
So what was it like then building a shared universe, like kind of making your own studio, like you're in charge, because you went from kind of behind the counter to in front?
Yeah, it's been great. A shared universe was an idea we kind of threw around for a couple years, mainly because people listened to me and Mike's podcast. I Sell Comics, and they would come up to us at Comic Cons, and they would be like, "Hey, we love Comic Book Men, but we really like I Sell Comics. We love what you do on the podcast, and we love Kevin's podcast. We want to do the same thing. How do I start a podcast?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can tell you what I know in 15 minutes, I guess. Not really long enough of a time, but I'll do my best." But it was kind of, we got hit so many times with this question. We were like, "Well, wouldn't it be cool if we had a studio or like a classroom that we could teach a legit class, like a 2-hour sit down, Mike, have Mike set up a class teaching people how to do what we do." And yeah, a few years ago we just decided to do it. We got some cheap office space, moved all our gear in there, and just started renting it by the hour. And yeah, there's a big learning curve in running a small business, especially one that's so like out there. These studios don't really exist even now, but they definitely didn't exist back then. Weird concept. Podcasting is still kind of on the infancy. We didn't know if it would work, but with as time went on, it's definitely worked out. For example, today, it's a Sunday. Most people have Sunday as a day of rest. We got 5 shows in here today, so it's been going pretty well. Most importantly, though, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, you get to speak then to so many different people, and I definitely know from the equipment I bought from when we started podcasting to now, I had no idea what a switchboard was until I think just last week I had this Rodecaster Pro 2, and I spent like 3 hours just hitting buttons.
Yeah, and it's a big interface, and yeah, you have to fiddle with it before you get the settings that you want right, for sure. Well, what I really love about the podcasting community is that we're all very helpful to each other, because we were in that same boat. So was I. I'd never touched a mixing board before, never hooked up a microphone, didn't know what an XLR cable was. But these are things that we had to learn on our own to learn how to podcast, especially early on. Now, what's nice, though, every podcast has a different setup. Whether different microphones, different gear, different philosophies. I always compare it to like Kung Fu studios. Like, this guy does Drunken Monkey style. This guy does Flying Crane style. They're all different, but we're all gathered to kick some ass, right? So as such, we're kind of united in this brotherhood behind the microphone. So we always meet other podcasts like, "Oh man, what's your setup like? Oh man, where'd you get that mic?" Or we're all very helpful to each other because we were in that same boat where we started where we didn't know anything at all. As such, we're very free with information. And, there's a lot out there. It's like, "Hey, what do you use to live stream? What do you use to edit all this?" I love sharing that information with people. And it's constant. We're now that podcasting has grown, we're meeting podcasters everywhere. These are things that we can all learn from each other. I love that we have this cool like community of like-minded people, just trying to create cool shows, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the nice thing about shared universe. When I saw your guys' stuff pop up, you guys are pretty much, I wouldn't say the only ones, but you guys are pretty still the only ones that are doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I just kind of realized there's no central place that you could book and just go record a podcast. So I was like, well, why not just build one? Our thought was if it failed, if no one wanted to use it or we didn't make any money, at least for the year-long lease that we signed, we would have our own place to record. So luckily, we got a lot of people in. But yeah, I love that this format. You can go to a studio. You don't have to. A lot of people record in their basements or their spare bedrooms. I have a friend who cleaned out his garage. He built a little studio in there. But I also realized that, a lot of people like to get out. If they have a guest, maybe they don't want them coming into the kitchen and recording, or it's messy, or they just want a different environment. So yeah, that way, we like to have that available for people. And what I really love is we have different podcasts coming in and out. Occasionally they'll stop. They're like, "Hey, what's your podcast about? What's your podcast about? Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. Come be a guest on my show." Like, we're truly sharing universes in here. And, most importantly, I think that's the goal. That's the goal. That's what I was aiming for.
Awesome. Now, obviously, you're pretty busy with this. I mean, you got a lot going on with your shows. Do you kind of miss then, like the day to day with the secret stash and just sitting
I
around with
do. I do. And maybe even more importantly than that, I miss making the show, man. I miss being on the show. I miss shooting stuff for the show. I miss seeing new episodes of the show. Miss people coming up and saying, "Oh, we saw that new episode. That was awesome." Yeah, that part I do. But I also like being, kind of the head of my own thing.
Yeah.
It's nice. Excuse me. It's nice not to get yelled at by Walt every day. It's kind of nice being your own boss. So, but I do, man. I miss. But the studio that I'm in now, literally, it's 2 blocks from the store. So I'm there. Still in there a lot. Still BSing with Mike's in there a majority of the time right now. I go in there, meet fans, take photos, hang out, see what's going on. If Kevin's in town, he's usually over there. So yeah, it's yeah, I miss it, but it's not like I'm miles away either.
Yeah. Now, with your experience with that, have you ever considered opening your own comic book shop?
That's a great question. So we get a lot of people asking us for advice, like, "Hey, I want to open my own shop. Do you have any advice for me?" And as you know, our biggest advice is don't do it. It's hard. It's hard. It's volatile. And yeah, if you don't know what you're doing, you can go downhill pretty quick. The local comic book shop, print medium, all this, it's a big investment. Gauging the interests of people out there, it's very difficult. So as such, I try to be truthful. I was like, listen, it's tough. Are you ready for this? My biggest advice would be don't. Maybe if you open a brick and mortar, maybe don't do online only. Sell online. You don't have the overhead of rent, insurance, keeping the lights on. But if you insist on this, it's tough. I was like, you know what? The path to success is if you open a shop, I don't know, get it featured on a major TV network after the hottest TV show on the planet. Barring that, maybe get an endorsement from one of the biggest geek filmmakers out there. I mean, these are the reasons why the stash has survived for so long. Yeah. To be honest. Now, Mike and Walt before him, they ran a great shop. They cared about overhead, and Walt especially. A lot of people ask me, like, "Hey man, that Walt guy, why is he so cheap? He's always lowballing people." I was like, how many comic book shops do you know have survived over 25 years? That was the key to it. Secondary market. He knew what you had. He knew how to get the maximum value out of it so he could sell it for more, for a profit, to pay the rent. So he wasn't being cheap. He was being a good businessman. But yeah, it's hard out there. I admire anybody running pop culture, comic book, memorabilia stores, antiques, anything in this realm. It's tough. And, especially after COVID, the pandemic, a lot of stores shut down, and a lot of them are still struggling and have, they're managed to keep their heads above water. And they do it because they love it. But man, it is a tough business. So yeah, I don't think that's something I would ever venture into. Maybe I would do something like to combine comics and podcasting, or it would be a comic shop and like a coffee shop. It would be bundled with a revenue streams, maybe a little more stable, a little more predictable. But man, to any comic shop owners out there, or if you sell online, or if you just vend at cons, I admire you. My full admiration to all the hard work that you guys have put in, because you love comics and pop culture so much.
Yeah. Now, obviously, comic books have come a big way. MCU, even the DC universe.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider being involved in one of those films?
Oh, in a heartbeat. Especially the MCU. Like I don't need a real part. I would love to be one of the Ravagers from Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I'll put on a Skrull cosplay. I'll be an Asgardian, like whatever. I would love to be in the background somewhere, maybe standing next to Thor or Captain Marvel or Nick Fury, or maybe one line would be cool. Just one line would be awesome. That's it. That's all I need. I don't need to be a featured character. I would love to be in the Shang-Chi universe, whatever. That would be cool. Yeah, who knows? I meet a lot of these guys at cons. Some of them know people. It's like, Yeah, I'm always joking as I hang out with Sean Gunn. I'm like, hey man, your brother ever need anybody? Little Asian guy.
Quick.
Maybe needs them for the new DCU. You got to fill it out, right? You need some people. You got my number. I would love to do that. So yeah, I would be in that in a heartbeat for sure. Yeah, I was hoping like Shang-Chi 1 or 2. So you need Asian extras or something, right? Yeah, I'm still waiting for my phone call, man. Hasn't happened yet.
It's on its way. And it's funny that we talk about because I said I would pay money to have been in Christian Bale's Batman
Oh
just to
yeah,
take a fist in the stomach.
yeah,
I
right.
would have paid for that.
Yeah, or just getting knocked over by Bane or something, or yeah, it would have been cool, right? So, but I'm lucky. I get to be in bit parts of my true favorite universe, and that would be the Viewisk universe, the Kevin Smith universe. So, yeah, he's thrown me in 1, 2, 3, I think 4 movies at this point, and then and I'm gonna be in his new one too. So, so I've been in Dogma. I'm in the background of Jersey Girl. I'm
Yep.
on the rooftop hockey scene in Clerks 3, and I play myself in Reboot. So that's 4 so far. And number 5 is his new one coming out called the 4:30 movie. He wrote me a bit part in that, which was really cool of him. So, would I like to be in the MCU or DCU? Absolutely. But I'm in the View Askew. I'm in the Kevin Smith universe. I'm perfectly happy existing in there for sure.
Equally as good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now, with all the comic book characters you've seen and you've heard from over your time of podcasting, is there one that you really want to see get into the movies that you are surprised has not happened yet?
The one I would love to see, and I don't know if it'll ever happen, but anybody reading comics in 95, 96, 97, DC relaunched a title called Starman.
Yes.
Superhero called Starman, and this is the Jack Knight version. And that version, I loved right away. Jack Knight, reluctant superhero. His brother had the mantle but gets murdered, and his dad, who was the old Starman, is too old to do it. But he's like, hey, you got to step in, and he's a reluctant superhero, and I love, he's an antiques dealer by trade, so he loves comics and pop culture. And he's like, listen, I'm not gonna wear the spandex. I'm gonna wear a cool like motorcycle jacket. I'm gonna wear tank goggles, and I don't want this weird cosmic thing that you guys are holding. I want the whole staff. I don't want the cosmic rod. That looks like a sex toy. I want the cosmic rod, and that's the only way I'm gonna do it. And I love that whole origins, that whole story. I love villains, the Mist, and that's one I would love to see in the movies or a TV show. I think he popped up in the Stargirl TV show a couple times, but yeah, that Jack Knight Starman is such one of the coolest characters in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. And that was what James Robinson, I
Yeah.
think, who wrote it. That jacket is memorable because the emblem on the back
Yep.
with like the star and the zodiac.
Yep.
Is probably one of the best jackets ever.
Yeah, absolutely. That's should be my next cosplay. I think everyone's like, hey, you ever cosplay anyone? Spike my hair up a little bit, wear that cool jacket. Yeah, I've only seen in my whole time going to cons, I think I've only seen that cosplay like 3 times, and the people who've done that, they've nailed it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But I think that one deserves its due for sure. But yeah, they're starting to catch up with my list, man. Back in the day, it was Shang-Chi, man. I was Shang-Chi Master of Kung Fu. That'd be a great movie. They did it. She-Hulk. She-Hulk didn't get a lot of love in any live action format. They did that. So yeah, the list is starting to get crossed off at this point.
Yeah, I'm still holding out for Man Thing.
Oh yeah, I think it'll happen.
I know it will. There's too much writing. It can easily be done, and everyone's gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, I think it'll happen for sure. So it's a matter of time. But yeah, eventually they're gonna get to these characters,
Yeah.
and then that's when hopefully they do them justice. That's what we hope for, right?
Now, is there one comic book character that you are tired of people talking about? You would love for them to disappear.
I don't know about disappear. Oh man, it's a tough one because no matter what I answer, people are like, oh boo, like.
There's
But
always
I don't know, man. And listen, I love Deadpool. There's a lot of Deadpool out there, though, man. But we're gonna see him in the MCU soon. That's gonna, and That's gonna reinvite. Not reinvigorate because he's always cool. But I do love how irreverent it is. That's a tough answer though. But sometimes going to a con, like we would have this joke, like, all right, how many Deadpool cosplayers are going to count this convention? It was for a while. It was that, and how many Suicide Squad Harley Quinns
Yes.
are we going to see this convention? I mean, that's another one as well. But I love them too. I'm not hating on them, but they did get overblown for a while, I think. So.
I mean, I feel the same way about Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. The animated movies are great.
Yeah.
But after the 200th Spider-Man I've seen at the convention,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, but that one's never going to go away, man.
never.
And, yeah, I know so many people. I love Spider-Man too, but I know some people are just rabid fans of Spider-Man. I'm like, wow, I get it. I get it. Are there cooler superheroes than Spider-Man? I think so, but he's definitely up there for sure. But yeah, it ebbs and flows depending on what's going on out there, which movies come out, for sure. Yeah, in the end, it's tough to hate on any of this because for a while we didn't see any of this really. Before none of this was cool, right? So to see it go from not cool to like super cool and maybe overplayed, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I would say back in the day, you could not walk into a Walmart and find an X-Men shirt, and now,
Nope.
Everyone has one.
Yeah, you can go to Kohl's and get Star Wars shirts. It's great.
Yeah.
Like you see girls in Star Wars shirts. It's awesome. Like that never happened in the 70s, 80s, and most of the 90s. So I'm glad I got to see it become cool.
Now, of all the conventions you've been to, what was one of the best cities if you had to pick one that was really memorable?
Oh man, I mean C2E2 for sure. That's one that sadly this year I have to go to Alaska, but that's a good excuse. That's when I fight tooth and nail to get to. Something magic always happens when I go to Chicago, almost every time. So I get it. I know why you're in that area. Other than that, New York and San Diego are great. There'll always be the linchpins. But there are two I want to bring to mind that I really like. Comicpalooza in Houston is one that I've been going to almost 10 years now, and always a warm welcome. But I think that's a Texas-sized convention that's also very well run, and we always have a good time there. The other one, which I'll be at this year in March, is Planet Comic-Con, Kansas City, Missouri. Very well run, celebrating its 25th year this year.
Wow.
Enormous, huge, great guests, great vibe, great vendors. Very quietly one of the best conventions out there. And that's one that I fully support. Run by one guy, his name's Chris Jackson. I'm sure he's had offers for people to buy it and turn into, whatever the big conglomeration are. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm going to run it myself. I run a good show. I get great guests. People love us. I don't need to sell right now. And that's one that I love going to every year as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. Is there one souvenir that you always, obviously you've been to a lot of conventions, so I feel like some people like, I get a pin or I get something. Is there something you try to get from every convention?
Man, it's a great question. Because I can only get enough that whatever I buy, I have to be able to carry it back.
Yeah.
But pins are definitely one thing. Pins, because they're small and portable. I'm a sucker for zip up hoodies. So if a comic's a zip up hoodie, like I'm all over it. I'm like, here, I'm like, Fry, take my money. That's one. A lot of them do like pint glasses. So I try to collect the pint glasses from each convention as well. Yeah, some of these conventions are getting creative though, man. They're doing challenge coins.
Yes.
They'll do cheap sunglasses, whatever. But there's the merchandise game, especially geared just specifically toward that convention, is getting very clever at this point. So, but yeah, I try not to overbuy. I have so much stuff here, man. I have so much stuff here.
Yeah. It's funny too, because was the big one at C2E2 that I'm looking forward to. They're having a sticker for the rat hole that was
recently found. Yes. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, they're very clever. Very clever. I have a C2E2 winter hat that I treasure. That was I was there in 2015.
Yeah.
when the staff members just threw it at me. I was like, "Oh, this is mine." They're like, "Well, it is now." So that's
All
one
right.
treasure for sure. And if you're in Chicago in April or March or February, whatever month they decide to do it, you know you need that hat.
Yeah, it actually has been a good winter, but I think it was, what was it? The last convention I went to right before COVID hit. It was that February before everything got shut down. I think it was like -20 out and
Yeah.
everyone was still in cosplay.
Yeah.
That was a rough convention.
Yeah, for sure. I remember. Yeah, I totally remember. And but that's Chicago, man.
Yeah, exactly. Before we wrap things up here, one of the questions that I always like to ask is, if you had your chance to co-create or sit in on a comic book of any choice, any genre, doesn't matter, what would be your one comic book? They said, Ming, you can write, you can help write it, draw it, color, whatever. It's yours.
Oh man, that's a tough one. Like, I don't know about creating if I would have any input. I would have loved to have been at the preacher pitch meeting though. It's like, all right, this is what we got. We got a priest. He's losing his belief. He gets possessed by an abomination, and he has the word of God, and he can tell people whatever they want to do. And he's pissed off at God. And he's on his search for him, but all this wacky stuff happens. Like I want to know who greenlit that, and thank God they did because it's awesome. But I guess I would have loved to have been in that room with Garth Ennis. Be like, hey, this is what we got, and then green, especially in the mid '90s. It was still a little conservative back then. I would have loved to have been at that meeting, man, for sure. But man, co-write, yeah, it's a tough one, man. I mean, or I would have loved to have been in the room with Stan Lee. Like, hey man, can I help you write Daredevil? Like, you're a great character. I love the look. I got a couple, and yeah, if I could have been like, hey man, the villain, his name should be Kingpin. Like, if I could, or Batman would have been cool too, though, man. Sit there with Bob Kane and Bill Finger, and
For sure.
maybe come up with some other villains, or maybe come up with thinking that I came up with them, or helping them shape some of the Batman villains later on. Going in, maybe if I had a time machine, knowing what I know, maybe influencing them a little bit. That would have been kind of cool.
Just seeing like Paul Dini, Ming Chen on a comic book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like, hey, your wife's a magician. You should turn her to it. He would have done it anyways without me, but maybe I would help him accelerate it, knowing what I know. It's like, hey, your wife's a magician. You should turn her into a character. Or like, you need more little Asian guys as a sidekick or something. Yeah, weasel my way into their universe. That would have been cool. Yeah,
travel's still possible.
yeah, true. So, yeah, but it's a tough one. That's also a tough question though, man, because that what they did, it worked. Obviously, they didn't need me to help them. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on and answering all of our questions today. For anyone interested in what you're doing and what you're up to, where's the best place to follow you?
I am all over social media, my friends. Not hiding or hard to find. Pretty much all my social media handles are Ming Chen 37, MINGCHEN 37. So that's Twitter, that's TikTok, that's Instagram, that's Facebook, or whatever, YouTube, whatever you want to know, I'm out there. So, and then if you want podcasts like we did, or you have a podcast, you want me on as a guest, or if you want advice, go to ashareduniverse.com and we can make that happen.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on and answering our questions. Everyone watching this video, you can find this, or you're watching it on YouTube. You can also hear this on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast from. Ming, thanks again for coming on. We look forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Thank you, my friend. That was a great conversation. I can't wait to see you next in person.
All right. Sounds good. Have a good day.
You too.